Hello and assalamu alaikum, and welcome to this second episode of the second season of The Democratic Way. My name is Tariq Ahmed, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you here. I would ask you to please subscribe to this channel either at YouTube on Freed by Islam or at its original home on Substack, taraqa.substack.com. And if you recall the first episode of the second season, we talked about essentially hate in politics and the manipulation of people by encouraging them to fear or hate others. And one of the examples that we talked about in the last episode was the current elections. The elections rather just took place for the Texas primaries, in which the governor, the sitting senator of Texas, U.S. senator, and a number of other officials, state officials, already elected state officials, sunk to the depth of using Islamophobia in their ads. And I wish I could tell you that Islamophobia hurt them in the election and prevented them from being elected, at least from advancing to the next stage in their elections. But that's not the case for most of the candidates who use Islamophobia. And historically, it has not been the case for race baiting and hateful candidates. When such people lose, it's because of a number of things. So we can see, for example, the very Islamophobic campaign that was run against Zoran Mamdani in New York City by his opponents. And they doubled down, they tripled down, they spent millions and millions of dollars on AI ads to attack him. They basically kept calling out a particular issue for the sake only of trying to make him look bad. But he was very steadfast in his position, which was that he wants to be the mayor of New York. And he wants to take care of all the people of New York, regardless of whether they look like him, sound like him, pray like him. And he did a wonderful job in that respect of reaching out to ordinary New Yorkers and getting those people to believe in him. And that's people of every faith. I'm a contributor to Jewish Voice for Peace. And so they send me literature and they keep me up to date. And when Zoran Mamdani was elected, they were so ecstatic for his election because they had been working with him for a very long time. And they knew that he was sincere in his desire to represent all New Yorkers, and they respected him and his track record. And it takes a coalition like that, unfortunately, to defeat Islamophobia or any kind of racism, for that matter. And maybe that's necessary. I mean, we would like to believe that Islamophobia or racism just fails on its head. We would love to believe that. But there's something wonderful about the forming of that coalition to defeat the racists. And there's a great lesson in that. That, this life is full of challenges. And some of the very best things that can be achieved ever in this life are from overcoming challenges. But that said, the threat that racists pose, in particular in Texas, but Texas as a model for racists around the country, it's real. And Islamophobia doesn't stop at the rhetoric of politicians who are running for office. In Texas, there is a fight to change the textbooks that Texas public schools use, the social studies textbooks in particular, that tell students about the world around them. And there's a fight from Islamophobes to try and make sure that the next textbooks of Texas will paint Muslims in a horrible light. And that is pure Islamophobia. And the saddest thing about this is that if they were successful, and they have not yet been, but if they were successful, those textbooks in Texas are used by many smaller states as well, because they don't have as many students as Texas. They don't have the buying power that Texas has by itself. So the textbook companies that will cater to Texas, if Texas tells them write this, they will write it. If the textbook companies are writing for Texas, then and have written that textbook already, then smaller states may purchase that textbook just because it's the one available. There'll be a handful of other options. I believe California has just as much buying power as Texas, and one or two other states that can boast that kind of leverage, maybe 3 or 4 at the most. But that's out of 50 states. So as a result, wherever Islamophobes win, just as wherever any racists win the fight to change textbooks, they are poisoning the minds of young people or trying to prevent young people from recognizing harms that have taken place in the past. So, for example, this is not it's not brand new with Islamophobia by any means. Look at just a few years ago when the state of Florida successfully derailed the curriculum of an AP African American history course. So these fights, they take place all over the country. They take place where racists are in control. And unfortunately, they sometimes win. But the net effect of teaching young people a view of history that is racist, or teaching young people a view of history that screens them from understanding the ills of the past, that is unfortunately the kind of terrible situation that can metastasize into something worse. So we really need, as a country, to stand up to racism. And we need, as a country, to call on our leaders, the ones who aren't spewing racist ideology. We need to call on them to bring this to the fore, to make this a part of their campaign against their opponents who are racist. They need to do this because it just isn't going to go away by itself. It requires us as a community coming together. If we want to fight racism, we have to do it together, all of us. And that comes to any form of bigotry. And I sincerely believe that people who identify themselves as conservative and who say, oh, okay, well, this objective of the conservatives is okay, they are falling short if it turns out that those conservatives are also racists. Not all conservatives are by any means, but if those conservatives they're supporting are also racists, then they have done a tremendous harm by supporting those people. So that's the only message that I really have for this particular episode, is that we need to go out and continue to oppose politicians who are racist. The country witnessed just recently, this past weekend, in fact, No King's marches all across the country, and I think that's laudable. And I think those people who came out should be supported, and those people who are thinking about going out should do so. And thank you again for watching this episode of The Democratic Way. Again, in this season, we're not talking about the Democratic Party per se. We're talking about the entire democracy that we live in and its weaknesses, what needs to be fixed inside of it. And we've been focusing on racism in politics these past 2 episodes. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful day.